Hey, today I will be just going through the process of how I came to my arguments, what led to my questions, and how I broke down the claims. Just to keep it short and simple. Okay, so the first claim was the right to bear arms is the most important constitutional right. Now, the way I broke that down was first I made the subject bold, so the right to bear arms, because that's what we're going to be discussing. Second part is the most important thing to consider would be the verbiage or the breakdown of the words. So there's the word most important there. That tells me that there are going to be other constitutional rights, as it says, but we need to determine which one, is the right to bear arms more important than the other ones. And that's very important because we're not just saying that it's there, we're saying that it's above everyone else, and we need to have arguments to support that. So my argument was self-preservation or protection. One, because I couldn't figure out which one, but I think self-preservation, if that's a value, just because that offers a life. Like, the freedom of speech, that doesn't offer you, that's not life or death, right? But the right to bear arms is because it determines your own safety, even if it's at the expense of others. I consider some outside things like animals and maybe a robber, if he had a gun, an illegal gun. Then I compared it to the marijuana and how people still illegally distribute it. But then the argument for safety was just, well, since this isn't the safest and it's killing others, then this can't possibly be something that should have the highest priority on it, right? I provided some statistics just to back up my evidence. Just to back up my claims. And that serves as the evidence. So when we were going into the questions, that was evidence-based along with the trap questions to ensure that they got to where I needed them to be. And also I started with where I wanted it to end and then let it there. I did that with all the questions, but I made a beginning question and then an end question and then tried to get to the end question. And it worked out for the most part. The second claim was, is the responsibility of a disabled individual, not the business owner, to provide reasonable accommodations. First step was finding the real definition of reasonable accommodations. I thought just to highlight one, reasonable accommodations, and two, the responsibility. I bolded the subject again and underlined the action, right? So providing reasonable accommodations and responsibility. That's pretty much how I got to the breakdown of what the pro and con side would be arguing. So after I figured out the definition of reasonable accommodations, then I was able to say that the con for that would be equality, and the pro for that would be merit, right? I said merit for the pro because they would need to argue that since you know what you need, you working for it, or you making sure that you have it and working for it is what you would get out of it, not us doing it for you, right? So you should work for what you get, right? Equity was because they're already disadvantaged, we need something else that'll make us equal to other people, and us doing that would make it harder for ourselves, and also we wouldn't be able to access it, but you know what we need, and therefore you can help us. Because, again, we can't really change anything in the job. There were some analogies and examples that back that up. And then when we got to the questions, it was more of trying to find a common ground and then breaking that into the trap questions more so. I tried to go back and forth, so wherever there was a question that an argument could be made inside of it, I would go and ask that question instead of answering the question, kind of deflecting it with my own question. And the last question was, the United States should outlaw the hunting of endangered species regardless of the cultural or religious significance of the practice. First, again, the subject, the United States. Two big words were, or the most important words that I found were outlaw, which means completely stop, eradicate, the hunting of endangered species, right? So, this is important because they're endangered. That means if you keep hunting them, more often than not, they're going to go extinct. Regardless of cultural, religious significance of the practice, I think, again, that's more of so the action of, like, you could say the negative or the positive, but I broke that down into protection for the affirmative and fairness for the negative. I was able to say protection because, it's hurting the economy. It's hurting the animals, hurting the economy, and, it's yeah, it's hurting animals. That's why you want to protect it, protect the animals, protect the economy, specifically. And then when we went into impact, it was more of, if you keep hunting these, they can't reproduce as much as they could, and you run the risk of extinction, which makes sure that the food that would be there eventually isn't coming ever at all. That was for the negative. And then the positive, that was for the positive. And for the negative, they'd be saying that we did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong. We've always been doing this. And if you come in and mess up our system, then that's not our fault. So we shouldn't be punished for something we didn't do, right? Fairness, essentially. With that, I gave some analogies, some examples to try and back up that claim. And then when we went into the questioning, it was different from when I started. This one was more of, definitely I'm finding the common ground, that I'm taking what you say and breaking it down until I get to where I want it to be, and then from there I go to my argument. So I'll just give an example for this one, but can we agree that animals are a good source of food for the affirmative? Yes. And can we agree that extinct means gone and not coming back? Correct. And can we say that animals that are endangered will eventually reproduce and extinct animals will not? All facts, for the most part, can't be denied. So then, if it's a yes to that, then it'd be, so you agree that more food would come from these endangered animals, but hunting them while they're down leads to limited reproduction and runs the risk of extinction, because they said, and then they could try and rebuttal. Negative will try to rebuttal and say, did we not hunt them before? And AF says, well, there's more people now. You can't keep doing the same thing that you did back then, especially if we're more dependent on these animals now. So, but he forms it in, but are you still the only humans on the continent? And do all traditions that worked in the past work now? So, right, so kind of referencing the old versus new, or contrasting it rather. And then the negative would ask, should we abandon our traditions because should we abandon our traditions that have value because of time? Asked, should we alter the tradition? Should altering the tradition be explored since this would benefit both parties? And then after that, it just breaks down further and further, but it's a few more lines. But that was all I had for this. I hope it was good. I liked the last one most, but thank you. See you Saturday.